Well, good morning. Welcome to Integrative Preparedness. How are you all today? I just put up a video, an interview of Sheriff Richard Jones of Butler County, Ohio, with Glenn Beck. Probably some of you have seen some of the interviews with Sheriff Jones or his press conference. I put it up on Patreon several days ago. And I put this one up. It's carried on Twitter. You can find it on Twitter if you'd like. You can probably find it on Glenn Beck's website, but I've put it on our Patreon channel for those of you who are with Patreon. I suggest wherever you watch it, you watch it. By the way, we just went over 900 patrons on Patreon. Welcome to all the new people. It's great to have you. You're going to find that you are going to get a lot out of it, and not just all the extra stuff that I put up, but we have such a community over there on Patreon. It's fantastic, and you're going to get a lot out of it. Make sure that you check the daily chat, and for those of you interested in ham, we have a whole section on just ham, and I might put in other sections for other things. I thought that was a great idea. And that was suggested by Triple G over there. So we'll think about that too. Matter of fact, after I get done with this one for YouTube, which will also be on Patreon, because everything that goes on YouTube goes on Patreon, just a lot of extra stuff goes on Patreon. I'm going to do another one on Patreon about specifics of how you can get ready for what we're going to talk about here, and that is they are coming for the small towns. And by they, I mean those people from overseas, from wherever, who come here to harm us. And I think that there's been this idea that the big cities were the main targets, and I think in the past they have been. But Sheriff Jones brings up something that actually I talked about some time ago. I explained exactly how they could shut down this country by attacking small towns, and I laid out exactly how to do it, how they should do it. well, they shouldn't do it, but how I would do it if I were them. And I had people come on and say, you shouldn't tell them how to do it. Hey, they know when they're ready to do it, they're gonna do it. There's this idea that the enemy is stupid. The enemy is usually, the enemy is sometimes stupid, but very often they are not. And one of the worst assumptions you can make is assuming that your enemy is stupid. Don't underestimate your enemy. That is a path to destruction. So anyway, Sheriff Jones, he was talking about more about the meeting that the sheriffs had with Christopher Wray, head of the FBI, and they were explaining the threat, the increasing threat to rural America, small town America. They touched on some of these things. I'll touch on a few of them, and then I'm going to expand on a couple. Okay, many of you live in rural America. Many of you live in small towns, and I understand that the small town life and the rural life, while it's not my thing, it's what a lot of people want, and that's great. I know that it can be peaceful, and it can be a lot of things. But there has always been crime in rural areas. It's not like those places are paradise. They're not. They're full of people, and anytime you have people, you're going to have a wide variety. You're going to have good, and you're going to have bad, and you're going to have most of them in between, and so. There have always been threats, but the problem is I think now we're looking at elevated threats in small towns. One of the reasons that it is thought, or I've always thought, not always, right? Not always, not since I was born. For the last couple of years, I've been, thinking about the increased dangers of living in a small town or rurally, and it's one of the reasons. I'll be honest. We were considering moving. In a couple of years from where we are in the suburbs to quite a bit out into the country. As a result of recent developments, I have actually decided not to. Okay, one of those reasons is because of the I don't want to say this in a way that puts down the people who are in emergency services in small towns and rural areas, because they're fine people. I know several sheriffs, from the counties to the south of here. I know people, on the fire department, the volunteer fire departments, and that's the problem is volunteer, most of them. And to be honest, volunteer firefighters, while they do their best, but they are not professional firefighters any more than volunteer or reserve police officers are real on-the-job, everyday police officers. And there's this tendency. Well, I'm not going to get. I started something that I'm not going to get into because it's going to take me down a path I don't want to go down on this one. The emergency services are not nearly as good or responsive in the rural areas and the smaller towns as they are in the cities or in the suburbs. Okay, you think about that situation down in Kansas City with the shooting down there. Okay, 850 cops, right? 850 cops. There's no way you can keep something from starting. Let's be real honest with that. There's no way you can keep it from starting. No way. Well, if you watch the one that I put up on American Reversion, yeah, we can stop this in a couple of generations by introducing the idea that fathers are important. Okay, but that's a social issue. But your emergency response is what stops it before it escalates, and having enough people around to stop it. Okay, and of course we saw there that even though it started, a couple of citizens jumped in, right, and took the guy down, but then the police were all over the place, and emergency services, 22 people shot, something like that. Emergency services were all over. So there very well may have been people who are alive now that wouldn't have been alive had it happened in a rural area or a small town area. That's just a fact. And people who I know who still work at hospitals and on ambulance crews say that people when they come in from rural areas, when they have to come to a real hospital, not an aid station like you kind of have in the more rural areas, they're in much worse shape, and their outlook is not nearly as positive. So that's one of the reasons that I've decided not to move out there. But I want to give some advice and a warning here to people who do live in these areas. Understand that you are the soft targets. I know that there's this idea and that there's this feeling that people want to latch onto, and about try that in a small town or whatever. Listen, if somebody really wants to go to town in a small town, they're going to do it, and you simply the response is simply not going to be robust enough to stop it. It's simply not. I know there's this idea of small town and rural America resiliency, and we're tough and we're strong and we're all that. And it goes clear back to Hank Jr.'s song "Country Boy Can Survive." I know there's this feeling that people want to feel about that. We're resilient. We know how to do. What? Not against this kind of thing. Not against this kind of thing. I spend a good amount of time in small towns. Okay. What I see are the same things that I see in. Well, no, I'll tell you what. I don't mean to be unkind here, and so often when I talk about this stuff, even though people will come on here and slam people who live in the cities and the suburbs, and I just don't understand that. That's a whole psychology of its own. I don't get it, but I try never to slam people who live differently than I do. Okay, but I am going to point out the truth, and when I go to small towns, I see a lot of people who are overweight, extremely overweight. Okay, also small town and rural America, it's an older population. It is. It's an older population. You know why? That's because the young people, when they get old enough, they move out. Now, not all of them. Some of them still stay there if there's jobs. I'm going to make one here. I think I'm going to make it on the American Reversion. I don't know why small towns are dying. They've been dying forever. You know, it goes back to the old, how are you going to keep them down on the farm after they've seen Paris? You know, young people want opportunities. They want excitement. They want entertainment. Now, you know, people might say, well, it's better if they are out there learning how to bale hay. Yeah, you know, well, maybe for you, not for most young people. And so as a result, they go off to college, or else they go in the service, or they go, you know, just to get better jobs in the city, and they're not coming back to the small towns. And as a result, you have an older population in the small town. You have a less healthy population in the small towns. To be real honest, studies show this. Okay, you have a financial level that's lower in the rural areas and small towns. Simple as that, because the wages aren't as high, and not nearly as much in small towns. You know, a small town person is going to make, depending on where they. Well, I'm not going to get into the figures. I will on another video. My purpose is not to do that, but it's economically lower than suburbs and cities. As a result, a lot of people don't have the resources to really, you know, do what I'm going to suggest they do over on the Patreon channel in a couple of minutes when I'm done with this. And you know, I know that they'll say, well, you know, people in small towns, they got shotguns, they got rifles, they got pistols, they got all this. Well, yeah, many of them do. Many of them don't. Did you know that? Yeah, many of them don't. You go to a small town, it's not the same. You know, pretty much every farmer, anybody that lives outside the city is going to have a shotgun, a .22, and maybe a pistol, and maybe not. Okay, maybe a deer rifle, maybe not. But do they know how to use them? Well, some of the guys know how to use a rifle because they go deer hunting, or squirrel hunting, or quail hunting, or duck hunting, or whatever. Okay, they know how to use those. But that is totally different than having a self-defense mindset and the ability to engage attackers. Okay, that's something that is learned, is trained. It takes practice. It takes mental practice as much as anything. Okay, you can hit a dime with 3 shots at 100 yards, and you know, when nobody's shooting back at you. But let me shoot back at you, and we'll see how you do. Okay, so it's a whole lot different. The presence of guns does not necessarily make someone safer. It's knowing how to use them. Again, I'm going to be talking about that on Patreon. So realize that as a result of these different things, small towns are prime targets. And like I said, I saw this years ago. I've made a video on it, exactly how I would do it if I were somebody wanting to harm America. And if I were going to do it, I just wouldn't do it in one small town someplace. I'd do it in a small town in every state at the same time. You want to lock this country down? That's how you do it. So for you all living in small towns, be careful, please, and certainly out in the rural areas. I mean, living in a small town, you know, you're going to be more of a target than Joe Blow living, you know, 2 miles down the dirt road. They're not going to come looking for you. They're going to be coming at the small town. But also, living down the dirt road, realize that your emergency services are so much farther than that. And everybody who lives down the dirt road comes to town, you know, all the time, right? That's a part of the rural lifestyle, and it's good. It's good. Realize I'm not slamming people here for living where they do, you know. And may I suggest you take a lesson for that. Any of you who come on here and say and call people idiots for living in suburbs and cities, they're not idiots. They just feel differently about things and want different things than you do. So Realize that. Okay, be polite, be nice. But for you all who live in small towns and or rural areas, realize that you are becoming more of a target. I hate to see it. Who knows? Where it's going to happen, when it's going to happen. I don't know. But the more prepared you are, the better off it's going to be for you, and the more prepared the community is, the better it is going to be for your community. Sheriff Jones talks about that a bit in the fact that he's training more. He's equipping his deputies with rifles now. They're training in response to mass situations. I'm staying away from the T word, as you can see, and they're involving or restarting what they had a Citizens on Patrol program where it's kind of we have them around here. A matter of fact, the city where I live has it every year, an academy for civilians. Kind of an introduction to what law enforcement does. It helps familiarize people with it, and those who want to can be a part of kind of a Citizens on Patrol situation where they know how to use the radio. And this can be very important out in small towns. If you live in a small town or you live in a county and you don't have this, if you're police chief or your sheriff, and I tell you, I really think the sheriffs are the one who are most responsive to this, give them a call. Say, hey, do we have anything like this? And could we get something like this together? We know that the world is becoming a more dangerous place, and I bet we could get, 10, 20, 30 people to come to if you could put on a class once a week or twice a week for a couple of months and kind of bring the citizens up to speed on how we can help do that. It's going to increase the safety of your community. So now I'm going to get off here and I'm going to do one for Patreon about my suggestions on exactly how to up your security and all that. If you're not with us on Patreon, by the way, the link is right down below. It's right above the links on how you can get my books. Did I? Oh, I didn't even tell you about my books, did I? But for those of you who are new and may not know, I know we have new people joining all the time. My books, I'm the author of the Stonemount series, and there's 6 novels in serial form. It's the same story going through on and on and on. The complete plan on how to prepare for, survive, and rebuild after a complete collapse of everything, the reversion, the revival, the renewal, and appeal to heaven, the blessings of freedom and hostages to fortune. You can get them either through Amazon or directly from me through our website, stonemount.us. Through Amazon, you get them fast. Through me, you get them slower, but I get to sign them for you, and I love to do that. Just got the load I've been waiting for yesterday. The Amazon truck pulled up, because that's who delivers them, and from the printer, and pulled up and brought me a bunch of big boxes, and now I get to sit down and sign and send out all the ones I've been waiting for. So if you've ordered one, you haven't got them yet. I know a lot of you out there are ordering a whole set. That's what you should do, because, and I'm not just trying to sell books, although, I mean, that's why I wrote them, right? I'm a writer. I do want to sell my books. But somebody gets to the end of the first book and they go, oh man, I want the next book. I want to keep going. Yeah, it's that good a story. So anyway, that's how you can get them. The links are down below. But if you want to join us on Patreon, the link is also down below. So realize that the threat environment is evolving. Places that used to be safe are becoming less safe, and you need to look at this with a clear eye, and not a prejudiced eye. Not everybody wants to think, well, wherever they live is safe, and I tell people, you go down into the hood, and every time there's a shooting, the news can go down there and talk and find a whole bunch of people that will say, oh, we can't believe this happened in our neighborhood. This is a nice place. This is a safe area. And everybody who knows, the cops and everybody else around, is laying them in their head. And I say, you got to be kidding me, man. I mean, this is Hood Central. This is running gun battle place. It's not safe. But it's just a kind of a bias that people get about where they live. So I want to encourage you, don't assume that wherever you live is safe, or is going to continue to be as safe as it has been in the past, because things are changing. Things are changing. You can't let 10 million people into this country and assume that it's going to go on like it always has. Okay, dangers are increasing. You're responsible for your safety and security, and the safety and security of those who depend on you. So make sure that you are doing something about it, and the first step to that is awareness, acceptance of reality of the situation. Okay, right. You all have a good day. Remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. And if you're with us on Patreon, I'll see you tomorrow. If you're just with us on YouTube, I'll see you sometime. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.